What if you could buy a property, pull almost all of your money back out after refinancing, and then do it again, without waiting years to save a new deposit? That is exactly what the BRRRR strategy allows, and in 2026, with interest rates beginning to stabilize across UK and EU markets, the conditions to execute this properly are better than they have been in 3 years. Stay with me, because in the next 15 minutes I am going to walk you through the exact numbers, the exact process, and the exact mistakes that cost investors tens of thousands before they even realize it. Welcome back to Property Investor TV, the channel where we cut through the noise and bring you data-driven analysis for serious property investors across the UK, the EU, and the US. If you are new here, we publish rigorous investment breakdowns every single week, and this one is one of the most requested topics we have ever covered. In this video, you are going to learn exactly how the BRRRR cycle works in today's lending environment, how to calculate your refinance uplift correctly so you know precisely how much capital you can recycle, and what lenders are actually scrutinizing in 2026 that they were not 2 years ago. We will walk through 3 real case studies, one in Birmingham, one in Rotterdam, and one in a US mid-market city, so you can see the numbers working in practice, not just in theory. And stay until the end, because the final section covers the 3 most common mistakes that silently destroy BRRRR returns, and at least one of them will almost certainly apply to your next deal. What BRRRR actually means, and why 2026 is a pivotal year. BRRRR stands for buy, refurbish, rent, refinance, repeat. At its core, the strategy is about value engineering. You acquire a property below its stabilized value, you force appreciation through refurbishment, you place a tenant to prove rental income, and then you refinance against the new, higher valuation to release capital. That released capital then seeds your next acquisition. Done correctly, the same £80,000 or €80,000 or $80,000 of starting capital can be used across multiple properties in sequence rather than sitting permanently locked in a single asset. The reason 2026 is significant is twofold. First, the Bank of England base rate has moved down from its peak of 5.25%, and while borrowing is still materially more expensive than it was in 2021, the trajectory is now downward. That matters for refinance stress testing, which I will cover shortly. Second, the refurbishment cost environment is beginning to stabilize after 2 years of elevated materials pricing driven by supply chain disruption. Contractors in the UK are reporting more competitive quoting in Q1 2026 than at any point since 2022, and that directly improves your refurbishment margin. Now, the strategy is not new. Investors have been running BRRRR cycles for decades under various names. What has changed is the precision required. When base rates were at 0.5%, you could make several structural errors and still generate a positive outcome because cheap debt covered many sins. In 2026, your numbers need to be tight. Your purchase price, your refurbishment budget, your rental income projection, and your refinance valuation all need to be calculated conservatively, and each one has a specific methodology, which we are going to go through now. B-roll note. Time lapse of a UK terraced house being refurbished. Skips outside. Builders working. Finished interior shots. The numbers. Calculating refinance uplift across 3 markets. Let us start with Birmingham. Our case study property is a 3-bedroom mid-terrace in the B21 postcode, acquired off-market in a distressed condition for £130,000. The refurbishment, which included a full kitchen replacement, bathroom renovation, replastering, rewiring, and a new boiler, cost £28,000 and took 9 weeks. Total capital deployed at that point was £158,000, plus purchasing costs of approximately £5,500, bringing the all-in figure to roughly £163,500. Post-refurbishment, a RICS valuation placed the property at £185,000. The investor refinanced at 75% loan to value on a 5-year fixed buy-to-let product at 4.9%. That produced a mortgage of £138,750. Subtract that from the £163,500 deployed, and the capital left in the deal is £24,750. The property now generates £950 per month in rent, producing a gross yield of 6.16% on the refinanced valuation. Monthly mortgage payment is approximately £565 on an interest-only basis, leaving a gross monthly surplus of £385 before management fees, insurance, and voids. That is a credible, cash-flowing asset with only £24,750 of the investor's capital permanently tied up. Now Rotterdam. The Dutch market operates differently. A two-bedroom apartment in the Delfshaven district was acquired for €142,000 requiring modernization. Refurbishment cost €19,000. All-in cost, approximately €165,000. Post-refurbishment valuation, €195,000. Dutch mortgage lenders in 2026 are refinancing investment properties at up to 70% loan-to-value, producing a loan of €136,500. Capital remaining in the deal, roughly €28,500. Monthly rent achieved, €1,150, which at a 70% LTV mortgage of approximately €136,500 at around 4.3% interest only equates to monthly interest of approximately €490. The gross monthly surplus is €660. Rotterdam's rental demand from young professionals and international workers remains structurally strong, which is a critical factor in the BRRRR model. In the US mid-market, specifically Columbus, Ohio, the numbers look different again. A three-bedroom single-family home was purchased for $118,000 in a working-class neighborhood with strong rental fundamentals. Refurbishment cost $22,000. Total invested, $140,000. After refurbishment, the property was appraised at $165,000. A DSCR loan, a debt service coverage ratio loan, which is the common investment vehicle in the US market, at 75% LTV produced a loan of $123,750. Capital remaining in the deal, $16,250. Monthly rent, $1,375. Monthly mortgage payment on a 30-year DSCR product at 7.1%, approximately $830. Monthly gross surplus, $545. Across all three markets, notice what has happened. In each case, a significant proportion of the initial capital has been returned through the refinance, and what remains in the deal is a fraction of what was originally deployed, whilst a cash-flowing asset and a mortgage are now doing the work. B-roll note. Split screen of property valuations, mortgage documents, and calculator screens showing financial projections. What lenders are looking for in 2026, and how to stress test your deal. Understanding the refinance stage is arguably the most important skill in the BRRRR model, because this is where most investors either succeed or discover they have made an expensive miscalculation. In the UK, buy-to-let lenders in 2026 are applying interest coverage ratio tests, commonly referred to as ICR tests, at a stressed rate typically between 5.5% and 6.5%, even if your actual product rate is lower. This means your rental income needs to cover the stressed mortgage payment at a ratio of 125% for basic rate taxpayers and 145% for higher rate taxpayers. If you are refinancing a property in Birmingham at £138,750 and the lender stresses at 6.0%, they are testing affordability at £8,325 per annum in interest, and they want 145% of that, approximately £12,070 in rental income. At £950 per month, your annual rent is £11,400. That is a thin margin, and a lender running the stricter 145% test may require you to refinance at a slightly lower LTV. You need to know this before you commit to your purchase price, not after. In the Netherlands, the national hypotheek guarantee does not apply to investment properties, and lenders are applying their own affordability matrices based on rental income projections verified against local market data. Overestimating rent by even €100 per month can shift your maximum refinance loan by €15,000 to €20,000, materially affecting your capital recycling outcome. In the US, The DSCR framework is more straightforward in one respect. Lenders are directly measuring whether the rental income covers the proposed debt service, typically requiring a ratio of 1.20 to 1.25. That means for every dollar of mortgage payment, you need between £1.20 and £1.25 of rental income. The complexity in the US is that appraisal methodology can vary significantly between lenders and appraisers, particularly in markets experiencing rapid change. So obtaining a desktop pre-appraisal estimate before committing to refurbishment scope is best practice. The stress test framework I recommend for any BRRRR deal is a simple 3-scenario model. In your base case, use the rental income you have achieved or conservatively expect. In your downside case, reduce that rental income by 10% and increase your refurbishment costs by 15%. In your severe downside case, reduce rental income by 20% and increase refurbishment costs by 25%. If the refinance still releases enough capital to make the deal worthwhile in the downside scenario, you have a robust deal. If the deal only works in the base case, you are taking on meaningful execution risk. B-roll note. Close-up of a spreadsheet with BRRRR stress test scenarios and mortgage calculations on a laptop screen. The 3 mistakes that silently destroy BRRRR returns. Mistake number 1 is over-refurbishment. This is the single most common error and it is driven by a natural instinct to do the best possible job. The problem is that refurbishment value is not linear. Spending £10,000 on a kitchen might add £15,000 to the valuation in one market and only £8,000 in another. Every pound spent on refurbishment that does not generate at least £1 of additional valuation is capital destruction. In the BRRRR model, your refurbishment specification must be calibrated to the comparable sales in that specific postcode, not your personal taste, and not the highest standard the street can theoretically support. The comparable evidence that your surveyor or appraiser will use is the evidence you should be designing your refurbishment around. Mistake number 2 is incorrect bridging loan structuring. Many BRRRR investors use short-term bridging finance to fund the acquisition and refurbishment before refinancing onto a term mortgage. Bridging rates in the UK in 2026 are typically between 0.85% and 1.10% per month, which annualizes to over 12%. Every week your project overruns costs you money, not just in contractor time but in bridging interest. A 9-week project that runs to 14 weeks because of a late kitchen delivery or a planning query can add £2,500 to £4,000 in additional bridging costs on a £150,000 facility. You must build a minimum 4-week contingency buffer into your bridging term and factor that cost into your deal appraisal from day 1. Mistake number 3 is misjudging rental demand post-refurbishment. This one is particularly dangerous because it does not just affect your cash flow, it affects your refinance. Lenders are valuing your property on the basis of estimated rental income, and if you have refurbished a family home to a high specification in an area where the tenant demographic is primarily single professionals who prefer smaller, lower-cost units, you may find that your rental evidence is weaker than you projected. The solution is to conduct rental demand analysis before you purchase, not after you have completed the refurbishment. Speak to letting agents in the specific street or estate. Look at the volume of rental listings and average days on market for comparable properties. Understand who the tenant is before you decide what to build for them. B-roll note. Footage of a refurbished property interior showing finished kitchen and living room, followed by a letting agent showing a prospective tenant around. Let me give you the 3 key takeaways from everything we have covered today. Takeaway 1. The BRRRR strategy is a precision model, not a passive one. The refinance uplift you achieve is a direct function of the purchase price you negotiate, the refurbishment you scope correctly, and the rental income you can evidence. Get any one of those wrong by a significant margin and your capital recycling outcome deteriorates materially. Build your numbers from the end. Start with the refinance valuation you need and work backwards to the maximum purchase price and refurbishment budget. Takeaway 2. Lender criteria is the gate you must pass through, and in 2026 that gate is tighter than it has been. Understand the ICR stress test or DSCR requirement for your specific market before you commit capital. A deal that delivers excellent rental yield but fails a lender's stress test at 75% LTV is not a BRRRR deal. It is a buy and hold with capital trapped inside it. Takeaway 3. The mistakes that destroy BRRRR returns are almost always predictable. Over-refurbishment, bridging cost overruns, and demand misjudgment are not bad luck. They are failures of pre-deal due diligence. Build your 3-scenario stress test. Speak to your surveyor and your letting agent before you purchase, and treat your refurbishment specification as a financial decision, not an aesthetic one. Do those 3 things consistently and the BRRRR strategy becomes a genuinely repeatable, scalable system for building a property portfolio without constantly injecting fresh equity. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We publish serious property investment analysis every single week and you do not want to miss it. Drop your BRRRR questions in the comments below and we will answer them directly, whether it is about a specific market, a deal structure, or a refinance scenario you are working through. And if you want to go deeper on bridging finance and how to structure short-term property debt correctly, our Bridging Finance Masterclass playlist is linked on screen now. See you in the next one.